this isn't just another missing child case. It's darker, messier, and far more disturbing. In Donabate, Ireland, a little boy named Daniel Aruebose vanished in 2022. He was only 3 years old. But here's the twist, his disappearance wasn't even officially recognized until years later. That's right, 3 years passed before anyone in authority thought, wait a second, where's Daniel? How does a child vanish without the world noticing? Welcome back to True Crime and Tales, where we unravel the stories others are too afraid, or too ashamed, to tell. Before we begin this chilling case, let me ask you, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, it's always incredible to see how far these stories reach. And if you want to join a community that brings forgotten mysteries back into the light, make sure you subscribe. Daniel was last seen in 2022, a toddler just learning about the world. But while most parents record first steps, first words, and birthdays, his story turned into a timeline of silence. For years, the Gardaí, the Irish police, had no record of his disappearance. Why? Because no one in authority had ever logged him as missing. Think about that. In a country where people panic if their dog runs out of the yard, a 3-year-old boy vanished, and the system shrugged. Fast forward to 2025. Public concern began mounting. Questions swirled, where's Daniel? How could no one notice? It wasn't until a welfare inquiry raised alarms that the case finally became official. By then, the world had moved on, but Daniel's story had barely begun. This isn't just negligence. It's a chilling reminder that some lives slip through the cracks, invisible until tragedy forces them into the spotlight. In September 2025, investigators searching a wasteland in Donabate uncovered skeletal remains believed to be Daniel's. DNA tests are pending, but the location and timeline are damning. If confirmed, this means Daniel lay forgotten for years while paperwork gathered dust. And here's the kicker, even after the remains were found, officials fumbled with their statements. Some suggested further analysis was needed. Translation? We dropped the ball, but we'll get back to you after another coffee break. What do you think so far? Could this be one of the worst cases of systemic failure you've heard of? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and while you're here, hit like and subscribe. That way, you'll never miss when we expose stories others would rather keep buried. When news broke, Ireland reacted with a mix of outrage and heartbreak. Social workers, police, and even neighbors were asked, how did no one speak up? Some said they assumed Daniel was living with relatives. Others claimed they didn't realize he was gone at all. Sarcasm aside, this isn't a magic trick, you don't just misplace a child like spare change. Someone, somewhere knew. Here's where it gets truly unsettling. In those missing years, Daniel's absence was never flagged in schools, health systems, or even among locals. How does a 3-year-old's entire existence vanish without a trace? The uncomfortable truth is, it doesn't, unless society collectively decides to look away. Daniel's case forces us to confront an ugly reality. Children don't disappear in a vacuum, they disappear when systems fail, when accountability evaporates, and when silence becomes more convenient than truth. But what really happened between 2022 and 2025? And who, if anyone, will ever face justice for letting this tragedy unfold? Stay tuned, because the answers might be even darker than the disappearance itself. When authorities finally decided to look for Daniel, they didn't find him at home, in school, or with relatives. No. They found bones. Hidden in a desolate wasteland in Donabate, in September 2025, investigators uncovered what they believe are Daniel's remains. And just like that, the story went from a missing child to a crime scene buried in weeds. Now, here's the part that makes your blood run cold, this wasn't an accident. You don't just misplace a child in an abandoned lot for 3 years. Someone put him there. And for 3 years, No one asked the right questions. The search team combed through the wasteland, a stretch of land most locals avoid. It's the kind of place where rusting cans outnumber people, and silence is louder than any alarm. There, amid broken bottles and garbage, lay the skeletal remains of a boy. A child. Likely Daniel. DNA analysis is still ongoing, but investigators admit the evidence is damning. Clothes, age, location. All point back to Daniel. His story didn't end in laughter, school bags, or birthday candles. It ended in silence, in a forgotten field that mirrored how society treated him in life, forgotten. And what did the authorities do after this grim discovery? Well, in true bureaucratic fashion, they hesitated. Spokespersons mumbled about further analysis and ongoing investigations. Translation? We failed for 3 years, and now we need time to polish our excuses. It's the kind of official response that sparks outrage. Because if a system can lose a child, delay his missing status for 3 years, and then drag its feet when his remains show up, what exactly can it fail at? The Irish public didn't stay quiet. Media headlines screamed. Parents demanded answers. And ordinary people asked the question officials couldn't: how can a child vanish and no one notice? Some neighbors said they thought Daniel was with relatives. Others admitted they didn't realize he was gone. Schools didn't raise alarms, healthcare systems didn't follow up, and welfare checks slipped through the cracks. But let's be brutally honest, this isn't slipping through the cracks. This is the whole house collapsing. So what do you think? Is this a tragedy born of incompetence, or is there something darker hiding beneath the surface? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit like and subscribe. You'll want to stay with us as we peel back the layers of this chilling case. Here's what makes this story worse. Daniel's existence wasn't just forgotten, it was erased. His absence didn't trigger alerts. His name wasn't on missing persons lists. No police appeals. No public campaigns. Nothing. For 3 years, the silence around him was deafening. Children don't vanish like socks in a laundry machine. A toddler doesn't just walk off the map. Someone knew. Someone always knows. Authorities haven't confirmed who's responsible. But the grim reality is clear: Daniel's disappearance wasn't a random accident. You don't end up buried in wasteland by mistake. The investigation is now circling around questions of neglect, guardianship, and, potentially, foul play. And here's the unsettling twist: if someone was responsible for Daniel during those 3 years, then this isn't just a failure of the system. It's complicity. Someone had custody, someone was supposed to care for him, and someone, somewhere, didn't want him found. The wasteland has given up its secret, but the case is far from solved. Daniel's short life was marked by silence, neglect, and a final, chilling discovery. But who is to blame? The guardians who failed him? The system that ignored him? Or both? The truth is still buried, and the investigation has only begun. The discovery of Daniel Aruebose remains in that wasteland didn't just close one chapter, it ripped open another. Because now the question isn't where Daniel is. It's who put him there, and why nobody screamed until it was too late. Justice should feel inevitable here. A child dies, authorities investigate, and the guilty face consequences. Simple. Except, this is real life, and real life has a cruel sense of humor. Let's start with the obvious: Daniel was a toddler. He couldn't cook his own meals, buy a bus ticket, or wander off into the wilderness. That means he had guardians. People who were legally and morally bound to care for him. So where were they? Why didn't they report him missing? Why didn't they sound alarms when his bed stayed empty for 1 night, and then 3 years? Officials now admit Daniel had been in the care of relatives. But relatives who, according to them, failed to maintain adequate contact with services. That's bureaucratic code for, they disappeared off the radar, and we shrugged. And while the system points at the guardians, the guardians aren't exactly holding press conferences to explain themselves. The silence is telling, deafening, even. In Ireland, this case has sparked a furious round of finger-pointing. Was it Tusla, the child protection agency, that failed? Was it the Gardaí, who didn't ask the right questions? Or was it family members, whose silence now feels less like grief and more like guilt? The truth is, it's all of the above. A cocktail of neglect, oversight, and indifference, shaken until a child's life simply evaporated. But let's pause here. What do you think? Who carries the heaviest blame, his guardians, or the system that let them vanish into the shadows? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're finding this story as shocking as it is heartbreaking, hit like and subscribe. It helps us keep exposing the cases others would rather bury. Now, with Daniel's remains found, Gardaí have opened a criminal investigation. That's good news, on paper. But investigations like this don't move fast. They move cautiously, methodically, and sometimes, painfully slow. Detectives are combing through timelines, interviewing relatives, and reconstructing Daniel's final days, or more accurately, his final years of neglect. They're chasing leads that should have been followed in 2022. It feels less like justice in motion and more like justice on delay. Here's where things take a darker turn. The public outrage in Ireland is intense, and rightfully so. People are demanding accountability, not just for Daniel's death, but for how his life was allowed to dissolve without notice. Parents are asking, if this can happen to him, how many more children are slipping through the cracks? If systems meant to protect kids can fail this spectacularly, what's left? And the answer no one wants to say aloud? Probably more than we'd like to admit. But the investigation has another problem: silence. Surviving relatives aren't talking. Key figures connected to Daniel's guardianship are either unavailable, unwilling, or mysteriously quiet. It's hard not to see the parallel to another case we've all heard about, the boy in the box. A child, voiceless in death, surrounded by adults who choose silence over truth. History repeating itself, with the same bitter ending: no justice. It's almost as if silence is the family heirloom here. Forget gold chains or old photo albums. What gets passed down is the ability to keep your mouth shut when it matters most. So where does this leave us? A toddler missing for 3 years before anyone noticed. Remains discovered in a wasteland. Authorities scrambling to piece together what should have been obvious from the start. A family tree where the branches prefer silence to truth. Daniel Aruebose's story is more than a tragedy, it's an indictment. On families that fail, systems that fail, and societies that only pay attention when a child is already dead. And that's the real horror here: justice isn't guaranteed. Silence may win again.